around insurance, specialty pharmacies, patient assistance programs, insurance. And there's been one amazing human who has answered all of my questions. Sometimes I ask her 6 to 10 questions in a day. I've asked her the same question probably 6 times, and she's incredibly patient with me. And so I asked her if she would be willing to come and share with you the knowledge that she has about getting an approved medicine to an individual when there's a specialty pharmacy and it's a rare disease medication. And so Lisa Fleury is here to, give you an overview. And her presentation is not going to be specific to Skyclarys. She's going to talk more broadly about how this process works when there's a new medication in a rare disease community and you're not just having your doctor write a prescription and pick it up at your local CVS, and all of the different players in the system. And Lisa is also open for questions once she's done kind of giving us an overview. So with that, Lisa Fleury.
Hello, everybody, and good afternoon. Thank you very much for inviting me, Jen, to speak, and I've really enjoyed the conversations we've had so far. As Jen said, I'm here today to talk about specialty drug access, and I'm responsible for patient services at Reata, and as of 2 weeks ago, I'm now part of the Biogen family, which is very, very exciting. Personally, I can share that we really would love to see this product be available to patients in other countries. And we know that Biogen has the resources and the footprint to do that faster than the small but mighty and scrappy Reata team could have done. And in my position, I'm really excited about the potential to enhance the services that we're able to offer our patients, given the precedent of Biogen services for their rare diseases. So they've opened up their arms and welcomed us into their family, and really looking forward to what we can do together in the next several weeks and months. So what I want to focus on today is access to specialty drugs. This is new for a lot of people in this room. You waited a long time for a treatment. You waited a long time for FDA approval. You sat through a lot of delays to get to approval, then for product availability. But now a product is here, and yes, it's the first, but it won't be the only specialty drug. And we hope, and based on what I heard today from the other manufacturers and the great work that FARA is doing, there hopefully will be many more treatments available in the future. But as Jen alluded to, specialty drugs don't follow the same path of the antibiotic you get when your kid gets strep for the 9th time, like happens in my household. You don't just go to your CVS to get Skyclarys. So I want to really focus on what this process looks like. So what I want to leave you with at the end of my discussion today is an overview of specialty drugs, the role of specialty pharmacies, and what the process looks like to get your insurance to approve the product and have it end up on your doorstep. So we'll also talk about the other steps, including out-of-pocket costs, as well as just the overall timeline. So let's go ahead and get started. So what is a specialty medication? So in short, it's a product that generally treats a rare or complex condition. Are they going? Okay. There. So these are products that treat rare, complex conditions. Sometimes there's special handling or some additional monitoring for these products. And again, speaking in general terms, when I'm talking about specialty drugs, I'm referring to the subset of those that are self-administered. So they're oral products you take at home. down the road, you may see injectables or something that you don't have to go to the doctor to get. These products are used by relatively few patients. So if you think about how many retail pharmacies there are, it just doesn't make sense for these products to be stored on shelves. But more importantly, they need to be handled a little bit more carefully. And so you will see that there are specialty pharmacists that provide a little bit of a higher level of service. And in large part, that's due to their accreditation as a specialty pharmacy. So you might find that your drug counseling is a little more intensive. They may offer you additional services to help you understand the disease state and the product and help address any barriers that may come up, whether they be financial or otherwise. So these specialty pharmacies, of course, biologics may be familiar. There's also Accredo, Optum, Alliance RX. And drug manufacturers may elect to have an exclusive specialty pharmacy arrangement where there's just one pharmacy that distributes product, or there may be a limited network of a handful of pharmacies. But the idea is to really offer patients consistency so that all patients are offered the same services. And I'll also put out there that these specialty drugs aren't found elsewhere in the internet, for example. So you may see certain products listed on GoodRx or BlinkRx or any of these other sites that purport to get you better prices. And oftentimes there are actually fraudulent sites that claim to sell the product. If the manufacturer has said publicly on their website that they are distributed only through a certain pharmacy, that's probably the best case. And unfortunately, we just have to accept there are still bad actors out there trying to get your money somehow. So I would just caution you. And I also thank Jen for bringing one of those instances to my attention where I got to work with our legal to send a really nasty letter to a website, and we got that taken care of. So that felt like an achievement. Okay, so I was listening to a lot of the presentations today, and a common theme tends to be this, it varies, it depends. So I'm going to continue to provide you with that uncertainty in this portion of the presentation because there's so much variability when it comes to insurance. There are hundreds of healthcare plans out there, and together there are thousands of policies that can be put in place and put in front of you as an individual with insurance. So in general terms, there are some common themes that we want to keep in mind. I'll talk about prescription benefits because that's typically where specialty pharmacy products end up. So formularies are the list of drugs that an insurance company will cover, and they make certain commitments to evaluate new drugs after approval and add them to their formulary. And generally, we see that private insurance and Medicaid plans will do this within around 6 to 12 months. And we see Medicare Part D and the Affordable Care Act Marketplace plans do this a little bit faster. So you may be asking yourself, why would it take them so long to add a product to formulary? And that is because insurance plans have different committees that will review all the available data about a product and then make a determination about how to cover that drug. And they're going to look beyond the FDA approved label. They're going to look at everything out there, including the clinical trial design. And then they'll use that information and any other publications to determine how they want to cover this product for their patients. That doesn't mean that no patients are getting access in that interim process. It just means that they're having to get what's called a medical exception. And it's a manual review that can take a little while. So people in this room may have experienced that where even after the drug was available, there was still a delay in getting insurance approval because they were waiting for their insurance to make a decision. So we're starting to see in our experience, now that we're 6 months from launch, that more and more plans have added the product to formulary, but there are some that still haven't. So say it with me now, it varies. So we'll revisit that shortly. Okay, so Prior authorizations are really common. You probably have dealt with this for some sort of product or service, whether it be physical therapy or another product that you've tried to acquire. And a prior authorization is typically required for specialty drugs at the bare minimum because your insurer wants to know that you meet the requirements as specified by the FDA. Different insurance companies will set their own policies according to what their aforementioned committee has decided is appropriate. And so that may require some additional information for your doctor or sometimes for you to submit to your insurance company. Just a hypothetical example of a product that I may or may not be close with is that sometimes the payer may ask for genetic testing results. They may want some lab work, and they may even want to see the clinical notes from a recent visit just to understand what treatments have been tried so far. And so you can imagine it's a lot of work for your doctor. They don't have somebody just sitting there gladly passing information back and forth to an insurance company. And so to the extent possible, and there are many restrictions around this, but pharmacies are able to assist in trying to streamline that communication to the doctor's office to just make it a little bit easier for them to understand what needs to be submitted. Okay. So let's operate in a world where your insurance company has given you approval, and that's great. Now we're worrying about the out-of-pocket expenses. So when it comes to cost sharing for specialty drugs, there's a couple different avenues that payers can take. Sometimes they will just set a flat copayment, just a flat dollar amount, regardless of what the drug costs. There's another type of cost sharing called co-insurance, and that's just a percentage of the total drug cost. And we see in private insurance plans, it's really about 50-50, just depending on the benefit design, because wait for it, it varies. It depends. So what you'll see in Medicaid plans, they typically have a very low cost sharing amount, but Medicare is its whole other thing that we're going to talk about here on another slide. But I just want to pause for a second and just acknowledge that Medicare generally is thought of as the program for Americans older than 65. But it is also available to individuals who receive Social Security disability income. And after 2 years, those individuals then become eligible for Medicare. So it's not uncommon for people under 65 who are on specialty drugs to be covered by Medicare. So I talked a few minutes ago about this formulary where the insurance companies determine what products they're going to cover, and then they use a tiering structure to align the drugs to the out-of-pocket costs. So very typical, and again, wait for it, it varies. You could have anywhere between 2 to 5 tiers on a plan, depending on the specific design. But I'm going to use this example of a 4-tier structure where tier 1 are your generics. Tier 2 often are the preferred brands. Tier 3 may be a non-preferred brand that didn't get the right contract with the insurance company to get on tier 2. And then there might be a dedicated specialty tier for products such as specialty drugs. So this formulary is generally updated every year. So this is the time of year when you are often asked to start looking at open enrollment with your insurance company. If you're at using employer coverage, there's generally not much to choose from, but you will want to pay attention to your cost sharing for that specialty tier. And if you have access to the formulary, you would want to look to see if the drugs you take are covered. On the other hand, if you get your drugs through Medicare Part D or from the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare exchange plans, you may have more to choose from. And so you can take a broader look and to make sure you have some comprehension about what you might be looking at when the plan year changes over come January. Okay, so I warned you about Medicare. So here's the deal on Medicare. I think it's really important before I go into this complexity that up until 2003, there was no drug benefit whatsoever under Medicare. So patients who had Medicare just went without, or they paid cash if they didn't have any other source of insurance. And then in the Medicare Modernization Act of 2003, which went into effect in 2006, our congressional leaders met for many, many hours and days and produced this mess, this monstrosity of a cost-sharing structure. And this was the result of political compromise, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. But let me just talk a little bit about the design of it. So these numbers have been updated every year. So what you see here is the standard benefit for Part D in 2023. So patients who have Medicare right now may have this structure, but of course, there's hundreds of plans, so it varies. Thank you. Okay. So the deductible phase is just over $500, and that's where the patient is responsible for 100% of that cost before the plan kicks in. And then at the $506 is where the initial coverage period starts. And the patient has a 25% coinsurance until we get to what's labeled here as the coverage gap. But does anybody remember it being called the donut hole? Do you remember that? Yes. So a few years ago, there was legislation that modified the donut hole, because that was literally once you reached a set dollar amount, Medicare was like, just kidding, you don't have insurance anymore. So there was legislation passed where manufacturers now pay towards that, closing that donut hole. And so the number in 2023 is $7,400. So once you hit that dollar amount, you're out of the donut hole and you're into what's called catastrophic coverage. And the benefit design specifies that patients have a 5% coinsurance, which seems small. But back when this was designed, there were not nearly as many specialty drugs on the market as there are today, which is wonderful that more rare diseases are getting treatments where they didn't exist before. But this doesn't really work in today's environment, because 5% of a lot is a lot, and it's still out of reach for many patients. But in reality, if you look at the Medicare population as a whole, only a small percentage of patients even reach the donut hole, let alone go into catastrophic coverage. But patients with specialty drugs, they don't just hit catastrophic coverage, they tend to get there really fast and stay there for the rest of the year. So that is a problem, and something that has been discussed in Congress for many, many years. So I'll talk in a minute about what's around the corner. Okay, so what is happening here is that the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed a little over a year ago included some provisions about Medicare that really have a positive effect on patient access. And so there's a lot going on this slide, but I'm just going to sum it up by saying that in 2024, that 5% catastrophic coverage is going away. And once patients get through the donut hole, they will owe nothing for the rest of the year. Again, this resets every January, but it is a positive development for patients who get their drugs from Medicare. The other thing that is happening is that in 2025, the donut hole is going away as well, and the cap is being implemented at $2,000 a month or a year, and that $2,000 a year has to be spread out equally throughout the entire year. So what that means is that in 2024, you might be hit upfront in the year with a really high deductible and initial coverage period and 25% in the donut hole, but then you're done. That's going to be about $3,200. But in 2025, that cap is $2,000, and they have to spread it out throughout the year. There's a lot to be defined about how this is going to actually work, because Congress was really quick to write that legislation, and then it got in the hands of Medicare to implement, and they were like, I don't know how to do this. So we'll find out more soon. We will let you know as soon as we know, because this is all very new. But regardless, this is a really, really positive development considering how things are right now. Okay, let's see here. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit now about affordability options that may be available. pretty common for manufacturers of specialty drugs to offer copay cards to help offset the patient cost sharing. Patients who have private insurance may be offered these copay cards, but there are government regulations that prohibit manufacturers from helping patients who have any government insurance. So a manufacturer could not give a copay card to a patient with Medicare or with Medicaid for that matter. So Medicaid patients have pretty low copayments, but for Medicare, this cost sharing structure is problematic for a lot of patients. And the Medicare program does offer something they call extra help or the low income subsidy. And patients who are eligible based on income and assets automatically get this extra help if they have Medicaid and Medicare. And then their insurance benefits for prescription coverage will go through their Medicare Part D, but the cost sharing is really low. But Medicaid eligibility varies by state. There's our magic word again. It varies. So if you have the income eligibility for the low income subsidy, which is 150% of the federal poverty level, and you meet the asset threshold, you could apply for the low income subsidy and get reduced cost sharing for all of your drugs. That information is available on the Social Security Administration website if you are not eligible and would like to find out if you might be able to receive that assistance. But there's some patients that don't qualify for extra help and they still cannot afford their out-of-pocket costs. So some patients don't have prescription coverage or any coverage at all. And so some manufacturers do offer patient assistance programs for those patients that are either uninsured or, functionally uninsured is the term that might be appropriate for those with insurance, but it's still unaffordable. So you would want to check with the manufacturer of that program to see what options may be available. So this is just a quick summary because I just wanted to share some additional good news again that patients with Medicare who get their prescription drugs through Part D are going to see some positive changes over the next couple years, starting up in January with the cap on out-of-pocket spending and elimination of catastrophic coverage, and then further availability of that low-income subsidy. It used to only be 135% of patients who are at 135% of the federal poverty level could get access to the low-income subsidy, but now it's at 150%. So it's a few more patients may be able to get those full benefits from the low-income subsidy. And then, of course, in 2025, that's the bigger sea change where the payment plan will go into effect and the products should be more affordable and accessible for patients who get their drugs through Medicare. Okay, so let's talk about timelines now. So what does the process look like between when your physician writes the prescription and when it ends up on your doorstep? So as a first step, the prescription, once your physician determines you're an appropriate candidate for a drug, will need to be sent to wherever the manufacturer designates. It could be a specialty pharmacy, or some manufacturers have their own in-house support programs or administered through a vendor. And typically it's not just a prescription sent in. There's a form that has a lot of other information that the insurance company will need. And so the pharmacy says, let's go ahead and collect that up front to minimize the back and forth. And oftentimes there's consent as well for the physician and for the patient to opt into the program and get the services. So that form gets sent into the pharmacy, and then the pharmacy does the work of contacting the insurance company to find out, is the drug covered, what's required, and they will work back and forth with the physician office to get that information documented. This is where there's a lot of potential for delays. The insurance company may ask for something the physician doesn't have. Like, for example, if there's genetic testing that the physician doesn't have on file, but the patient has, and there's a whole, chase going on to find that. Sometimes the insurance company will deny it because they made the decision that they don't think a certain subset of patients should be eligible for the drug. But the physician working with the patient can appeal that denial and continue to try to fight for coverage, which, that unfortunately happens more often than it should. I think there's multiple levels of appeals that are possible to get the insurance company to pay for a product. And the success rates, of course, will vary, but it's something we don't give up on easily if there's a denial. I will also say that a lot of all manufacturers do work to meet with insurance companies ahead of time to educate them about a disease state. And then once the drug is approved, they go and educate about the drug and try to help. I'm not saying influence. I'm saying to help make sure that the companies have as much information available to them as possible to ensure that the coverage determinations are appropriate. But again, there's no guarantee that plans are going to put in place policies that will align with the FDA approved label. So that's why all of this insurance back and forth is necessary. So once the approval is granted, the copayment or coinsurance collection time happens, and that's where copay cards may be applied if the patient is eligible, or screening for drug assistance programs may be possible depending on the situation. And then the pharmacy will do an onboarding call where they will provide some education and counseling and information, and then work to arrange the shipping destination. So if you want to make sure that a patient is home to receive a package, or to have it shipped to a place of work or somewhere else where it can be securely received, and it comes via FedEx or UPS typically. In our situation, it's either, whichever one is best suited for your particular geography. And then they will call you a couple weeks ahead of time for your next refill to ensure that you're ready to receive another shipment. But this is the what we call the happy path, where this could all happen inside of a week in a perfect situation. But in reality, sometimes it takes longer and there's obstacles. But I can tell you that at Reata, now Biogen, we are committed to making sure that appropriate patients have access to therapy, and working within our compliance guidelines will provide assistance whenever possible. So that's all I have for you today, but I'm happy to clarify any questions or answer anything you may have. So at Reata, when we were setting up the trade and distribution network, we did select biologics as the exclusive specialty pharmacy. That is in place for now and will continue to be the source of access for Skyclarys for the time being, and any changes will be communicated.
I work with patients a lot with specialty chemotherapy meds, and sometimes there's an issue with who is prescribing. So, like, would it have to be prescribed only by the neurologist? Like, I do neuro-oncology, so sometimes if we order a specialty like seizure med that's new, the oncologist can't order it, that we have to send them to a neurologist to order it. Like, do you know how that's going to work with this medication?
Yes, thank you. It's a good question. And unfortunately, I'm going back to my tagline. It varies, but it really does. There are the published policies from the payers that I've seen. Most of them use language about must be prescribed by or in consultation with a neurologist. And we know a lot of patients don't have easy access to Dr. Lynch or to any of the other specialists. And so they may see a primary care physician, but it really just depends on the particular insurance plan, if they will allow that or if they will require a specialist directly to submit the prescription. But the pharmacy will identify that and then communicate with that prescriber to make other arrangements. Oh, I wish I could give you a good answer for that one, but I don't know. And I don't know if anybody from medical wants to speak to that. Unfortunately, I'm not sure. In my role, I can only speak about US access and commercial availability, but I do know that there has been a lot of interest from Canada, and I would suggest that you call and speak to medical information because I think they might be able to give you a better answer. Thank you. Oh, Wendy. Do you want to come up? Do we have a mic? Yeah. Yeah. We can do a duet. It'll be great.
I'm hoping my answer is worthy of walking all the way up from the back of the room to answer. So if I heard the question was on ex-US. And maybe I'll tie it back to the question from earlier as well on the pediatric piece. We know these are the two key aspects of questions that have been a theme throughout being here on stage. So there is some public information available going back to the pediatric piece on clinicaltrials.gov on what we're looking to do to move that study forward. I talked about milestones previously as far as steps we need to take to advance that. A lot of this is around conversations with the appropriate stakeholders as well. So we hear you loud and clear as far as the unmet needs. So for those two aspects, those will continue to be priorities for us moving forward as we think through the next step. So again, not a very specific answer, but I just want to reiterate that those are the areas that we hear from you that are top priority. So we'll continue to drive those conversations forward for you all.
Getting mean blinkies here, but I hope so.
Hey there. So I have a US question. So there are families that I know. So this is me. I'm asking for somebody. I'm asking for a friend. I have lots of those. But they have Medicaid, and that 6 to 12 month thing that you were putting up on the screen. So is that every US state has the 6 to 12 month with Medicaid in particular? Or are there some that are fast tracked and others not? And
Yes.
how does that whole thing work?
Well, it varies. Yes. So I can tell you
Okay,
that,
so go to New York then.
well, I can share with you that we did have some states that came online very quickly after product became available, meaning that they would let claims go through. There were some that just got added October 1st, and there's still a handful of states that are holding out, but we just keep throwing the claims at them, hoping that they just give up.
Find the answer to that.
You get a prescription and you send it into the pharmacy and let them fight it.
So through Medicaid?
Yes.
All right. So I'll reach out to that.
Yeah, the
Not you as a patient. You have the physician send in the start form, just to clarify.
The
Don't fire
physician
me.
should still send the start form in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you keep appealing. You keep appealing.
Yeah. Keep it. Yes. And if you have challenges, I would suggest contacting the program, the pharmacy, if there's some that are stuck, because sometimes they're stuck because other reasons. It could be covered, but that plan is denying it for a patient.
So thanks to Lisa, I've learned a few things. And the Medicaid is, again, so every single state is going to potentially have their Medicaid approvals at different times, and they might not all have the same requirements. And that is a place where advocacy can play a big role. And so FARA has been working with the Reata Biogen team to understand when specific states are going to be reviewing Skyclarys and what their managed care plans are looking at for requirements. And so, for example, last month, Michigan had their meeting, and we were alerted that two of the provisions were going to be problematic. One is they were going to require MFARS exam, and they were going to require a review at 6 months with demonstrated improvement to continue. So FARA put together a letter to explain why that was inconsistent with the FDA label and the experience from the clinical trial, and put forward alternative suggestions for them to monitor clinical benefit or clinical outcome. And then we had patient families also testify at the P&T meeting. They were discussing about 10 or 12 drugs at that meeting. The only one that got discussed by the committee was ours. And they decided that their recommendation was going to be to remove MFARS and extend it out to 12 months. That would not have happened had our community not been at the meeting and explained their experience. So Jake and Claire and Maureen were there and explained, like, our local neurologist doesn't do an MFARS. We go to Philadelphia to participate in research. They do an MFARS, but the local neurologist doesn't do MFARS. You know, things like that. They didn't have to be experts in the data. They were experts in their own experience. And Helen Madden, our patient engagement manager, found out literally like 6 days ago, Arkansas, Missouri, and Nevada are all coming up next week. So we have like less than a week's notice to prepare to participate in those state meetings. And we're reaching out to our FA families in those states to also participate. And so this is a place where your voice is going to matter. We're going to try and reach out to you every time we know that there's an opportunity for this, because it can make a real difference. The other thing I'll say is the appeals process is unfortunately a part of the process, right? It's always easy for somebody to just say no. And sometimes they're saying no for the wrong reasons, whether it be the MFARS reason or age meaning people over 40. That's because that was in the clinical trial. Or even some have said no because of pes cavus. So Kellen has prepared an appeal letter, a sample that you can share with your doctor that will help them write a letter that addresses some of those issues and why those issues are not in the FDA label, and a little bit more education about FA and the data to take some of the burden off your physician and give them the information that they need to file the appeal. So those are just some ways that, you know, as we're learning, as we go through this process, that we're trying to be able to help. You have to email us. Yeah.
Biologics has it too.
Oh, Biologics has it too. We're sharing it around. It's not a secret letter.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for all you do.
Thanks.